Hey, my name is Robbie Crozier, founder and managing attorney of the Crozier Law Firm, and today we're going to be running through how you actually form your business by filing what's called a certificate of formation with the Secretary of State. Now, for this example, we're going to be making an LLC in the state of Texas, where we're based here. And this process will work for LLCs, C corporations, and other kinds of businesses that you want to file the same general process, but for all intents and purposes, this is going to be a Texas LLC. So first step you want to take is open up your web browser and run a search for Texas SOS business filings. That should bring up SOS Direct. You're going to go ahead and click on that. You can also just search for SOS Direct directly. But once you run that search, it'll take you to the Secretary of State website with a link to SOS Direct. SOS Direct is Texas's online business filing service through the Secretary of State. This is what's going to actually allow you to file your certificate of formation to bring your LLC into existence. So you're going to want to click Enter Site. There you go. Now, unlike me, you're not already going to have a profile set up. So the first step you're going to want to take is to create a new profile. There are instructions on here to do that, but we're going to pick up here, assuming that you've already created that profile. It will, once you create the profile, it'll give you a user ID. You can choose your password. And it's a pretty quick process. So once you have that set up, you're going to go ahead and hit submit to log in. And now it's going to ask you for payment information. I'm going to be blurring a lot of this out for me. It's annoying, but it's going to ask you for this information every single time you log in. This right here on this page will auto-populate, but you're going to go ahead and click continue to go to the next page. This is what you're going to have to fill in every single time, which is a real pain. I'm going to go ahead and move my screen over a little bit so you can see everything. You're going to have to put your billing information in there. And again, unfortunately, you're going to have to fill it in every time you log in. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. I'm going to blur this out as I go through, put in my card number. And you need to put in payment information here because most of what you're going to be doing on the Secretary of State website is going to come with a little bit of a fee. Even if you're running small searches, you can run more detailed business entity searches through here if you're looking for information on somebody else's business. For example, when the certificate of formation was filed, who the owners are, or at least who the owners were at the time of filing, when the business came into existence, things like that. All of that is going to be available here on the Secretary of State website, but most those searches, at least in Texas, are going to cost $1 per search. So just something to be aware of. So once you put that information in, you're going to go ahead and hit continue. And that is going to take you to the primary part of the portal. So from here, you're going to want to click on business organizations. And this is kind of your home base for business filings in Texas. You can do a handful of different things here. You can find, generally, for my purposes as a business attorney, I'm either searching for entities or creating new entities. So we're not going to go into searching for an entity right now, but this is a good way to make sure that your business name is not already taken. Because what I'll say is that Texas and other states too, when it comes to filing for your LLC, they're pretty lax as far as what names they're going to allow. Basically, as long as you are not applying verbatim, like letter for letter, for a name that already exists, you're probably going to get it. And an important distinction to make here is that just because your LLC name is accepted and your LLC comes into existence with that name does not mean that you're not infringing on somebody's trademark. Because again, these state databases are just that. They're state specific and they don't include everything else that's out there. So Don't think that just because your business name got accepted by the Texas Secretary of State, for example, you're in the clear. Generally, for my clients, I like to run a preliminary trademark search before I do business filings. We don't do this in every case because there is a cost associated with that. It's up to the client whether or not they want to go through with it. But just be aware of that, especially if you're using a really common name. Even if you luck out and that name isn't already in the state database for the state that you're applying to, it may exist somewhere else out there in the world. So that's just something to be aware of. So today, again, we're going to be looking for creating a new LLC. And to do that, you're going to be filing a certificate of formation. So you're going to go down here to reservation, formation, registration documents, click on the drop-down menu, and we're going to be forming a domestic limited liability company, a domestic LLC. So once you've got that clicked, you're going to click on File Document. You're going to go over here and select Certificate Formation. Also, yeah, the drop-down menus aren't showing up here for me on OBS, so just look for, obviously, look for what I'm clicking on when I choose something out of the drop-down menu here. So once you have that, you're going to go ahead and hit Continue. And unless you are there are a specific number of categories for businesses that are supposed to be classified as professional limited liability companies instead of just regular limited liability companies. We have an article, blog post we did about this recently, that links to a chart that the Texas Secretary of State actually put out to help you figure out whether or not you should do professional or regular limited liability company. Cheat sheet for that is if you're not a professional service provider, meaning a medical professional, a lawyer, an architect, an accountant, and some other categories like that, you're generally just going to be a regular LLC. Consult with an attorney if you have any questions about that. But for today's purposes, we're just going to be choosing a regular LLC. So we've got that box ticked here. And next we can actually choose what the name of our LLC is going to be. So for example, and this is good practice here. If you haven't already run a search to see if your name is clear, you're probably going to want to do that. Again, this is going to cost $1. That'll be charged to the card or the bank account that you put in earlier. But it's good practice to go ahead and do that. So for example, today the LLC we're going to be filing, let's just call it Robbie LLC. So we're going to go Robbie LLC. And I want to know if that's already taken. So we're going to run a name availability search. This is going to cost $1. And I don't think it warns you here that it costs $1, so just be aware of that. And we're going to see that we already have a Robbie's LLC, and it is currently in existence. Of all of these, this is the only one that would potentially pose a problem. I know I mentioned earlier, if the name isn't exact, it'll probably get through, but something like an apostrophe S is probably close enough to get you denied. So in this case, I probably would not file for Robbie LLC when there is a Robbie's LLC already in existence. There's a chance it might go through, but I probably wouldn't take that risk. And so we're going to go ahead and return to the filing. And we're going to call it Robbie Crozier LLC and see what comes up for that. Again, that'll be another $1 for the search. Just be aware of that. And it looks like we are good. There are no Robbie Crozier LLCs, nothing really even remotely close to that. So we should be good with that name. And we're going to go ahead and click continue. Okay, now we're going to choose the initial mailing address for our LLC. This is, like it says here, this is what the Texas Comptroller is going to use to send you information related to state franchise tax stuff. So you want this to be, and this address also importantly, this is publicly available. So just be aware that whatever you put here is available to the public. If you want to use something like a virtual office to, for example, if you have a physical office that you're renting space from already, then that's great. Put that there as long as you can receive mail at that location and your personal address isn't going to pop up when people search for your LLC. If you don't have a physical office, maybe consider investing in a virtual office space, which is basically like a PO box. You can use a virtual office for this as long as it can receive mail. And again, that will prevent your home address from being out there in the public. If you don't mind, a handful of my clients decide to use their home addresses anyways because they don't care that they're out there. And in reality, your home address is not difficult to find anyways. In most cases, you can use online property tax databases to figure out the home addresses of most people that you know anyway. But for those that are a little bit more concerned about, they just want less about them out there in the public, this is where you might want to consider using a virtual office address, for example. So we're going to make up, actually, we'll just put in my law firm address. You can go ahead and hit continue once you're happy with that address. Next, you're going to choose your registered agent. So the purpose of a registered agent is that individual or entity is going to accept what's called service of process for you. So in the event that you are sued, you have to be served paperwork. You've got to be served to initiate that lawsuit. And this is the entity or individual that's going to accept service on your behalf. So you want to make sure it's not a good idea to try and evade service by faking an address or an entity here. You really want to make sure this is someone who can actually receive mail for you and is up to date, because putting in inaccurate information here could lead to you losing a lawsuit by default, by getting what's called a default judgment, if in a situation where you're essentially trying to evade service. So make sure that the address on file here is a good one and one that can actually receive mail. This is going to be a public facing address as well. So in this case, in addition to that, there are lots of businesses online that will act as registered agent for you. A popular one is Northwest Registered Agent. There are lots of other services as well, some local, some national. You can just Google registered agent services to kind of see what's out there. There are a lot of good options for that. For us, sometimes law firms will act as your registered agent. So, for example, excuse me, we used to act as registered agent for a lot of our clients. We've stopped doing that more as of late, just because we've had some problems with mail getting to our address. And so I recommend personally, unless your lawyer includes that service in your business formation, just go with one of the big players like Northwest Registered Agent. So for us though, again, for these purposes, for example purposes, we're going to go ahead and put in our own address. So got a drop down menu there. And because it's not an individual here, it's going to be a business. We'll put our business name in there. Got all of our stuff in here. Once that looks good, we will go ahead and hit continue. Okay, now you're going to come to a question of whether or not the business is managed by managers or managed by members. The differences between a manager managed LLC and a member managed LLC warrant a separate video and more in-depth explanation. The short explanation that I'll give now is basically, if you're if you're the only owner of your business, if you're opening a small business, let's say, like a bakery, and you know that you have no plans to bring on another business partner in the future, no plans to bring on maybe passive investors as part owners, anything like that. It's just you, it's your operation, it's a fairly simple operation. You're probably going to want to be member managed. Basically, the manager managed option allows you to add a second class of individual into your business that has control over the day-to-day operations of your business. So in situations where, for example, maybe you have two business owners, one is going to be really hands-on and the other is going to be more of a passive investor. You might choose to make the LLC manager managed and designate the hands-on individual as the manager. And choose not to designate the passive investor as a manager. And what that will allow the hands-on person to do is make those day-to-day decisions in the business, whereas the passive investor will be limited to only contributing to big decisions that require members to vote. So things like buyouts of the company or bringing on a new member or other things like that that you decide together. So this helps in a situation, especially in situations where you've got multiple members who have different responsibilities and different roles, and maybe some are just contributing funds and others are actually managing the business. In those situations, you're probably going to want to be a manager managed LLC. If you're really lean, really simple, single owner, maybe a married couple, and you don't need that kind of bifurcation of duties and responsibilities, just go with member managed and that'll be fine for you. But again, as with everything else, consult an attorney and you can get a better perspective. So in this case, let's just go simple and we'll say this limited liability company will not have managers. This is the member managed option. So will not have managers just means there's one class of owners, they're members, and no distinction at all. Everyone who is an owner in the business also has capacity to kind of manage the day-to-day. So that's what we're going to choose here. And then you're going to choose add manager / member. And in this case, we'll just say that I, Robbie, am the member. So I'm going to go ahead and put in my information here. I'm going to blur a little bit of this out. Actually, it autofilled my law firm info, so we don't need to blur anything. We're just going to leave that in there. Pretend that I live in the office, which is true sometimes. Okay, so once you have that member info in there, you're going to hit update, and it's going to add me right here. If you've got other owners, and I don't think I mentioned this earlier, but member is just another word for owner in an LLC. LLC owners are called members. So if you have another owner that you want to add, you can just add them right here. It's important to note also that this is not like the final time you're going to get to do this. You can always add members in the future, and you can do that internally with your own corporate documents by passing resolutions and things like that. And that's something you're definitely going to want to talk to an attorney about. So now we've got our member. Let's just say I am the single member. I'm the sole owner of this business. So we've got me in here. I'm going to go ahead and hit continue. And we're just going to go ahead and hit continue again. This is basically ask, is there anything else you want to add? Is there a letter of consent from the registered agent? There's not. We're just going to hit continue here. And then it's going to ask for the organizer. So If you're the one organizing the business, you're going to go ahead and put in your own information here. This is just who is actually doing the filing right now in real time. Then you're going to choose your address. I'll put in the firm address one more time, but this will be your personal address. Okay. Oh, it's worth mentioning, this doesn't have to be your personal address. Just make sure that it's somewhere where you can get mail. So again, if you're going for anonymity in this situation, you can put a virtual office address, something like that, just somewhere where you can get mail if need be. So you'll hit continue there. It'll want the typed signature of the organizer. Just type your name. And then you don't want to do delayed effective date here unless there's a specific reason that you want your LLC to come into existence at a specific time. Then just don't fill anything out here. If you don't put anything here under delayed effective date, it will just become effective as soon as possible. In Texas, that's usually around a week, up to 2 weeks, potentially. It really just depends on how busy the Secretary of State is with business filings at any given time. So I've got my signature there, my type name. I'm going to hit continue one more time. And then it's going to take me to the full certificate of formation for me to review. So we're going to go ahead and look over all of this stuff. Robbie Crozier LLC. Make sure the information that I submitted is accurate. Got the managing member in there. Filing address. Got the organizer in there. Everything looks good. So when everything looks good to you, you're going to go ahead and hit submit filing. I'm not going to do that right now because I don't want Robbie Crozier LLC and I don't want to pay $300. The important thing to note is the filing fee is $300 in Texas for LLCs, same for corporations. So just make sure you're prepared for that when you do this filing. It is one of the higher filing fees out of the 50 states, but Texas, again, is pretty quick on the ball with like generally a 1 week turnaround time. So, and it's also a business friendly state from a tax perspective and a regulatory perspective. So I'm a big fan of incorporating businesses here in Texas. The filing fee is a one-time thing. You're not going to have to pay that annually or anything like that. So I would encourage you to go ahead and go for it. I'm going to click that. It'll take you to a final page where it says, thanks for filing, yada, yada, yada. And then you should hear back from them again in about 7 days with whether or not your LLC has been accepted or rejected. And if you follow these steps, most of the time it'll be accepted. If it's rejected because the name was taken or there was some other clerical error with how you filled it out, you will be refunded that $300. So don't worry about that. And yeah, with that, you are good to go. So important last note here, this does create your LLC. Once you get that acceptance back, your LLC is real and it is in existence. But what it does not do, that is not where it stops. And this is something that I always try to take great care in explaining to my clients. For general business purposes, this is an important step. Like if to do business, if you're required to have a business entity, this will get you there. You now have a business entity. What this does not get you is bulletproof liability protection, which seems kind of backwards, but it's an important caveat that just by virtue of having created an LLC like this, you don't necessarily have all the protection necessary to stand up confidently in court. And what you're missing here, and what a lot of my clients who self-file LLCs stop with, is all the corporate governance documents, primarily your operating agreement, your organizer action, your meeting minutes, things like that. Those are the things in a push-shove lawsuit situation that the court's going to look at and say, okay, can this business stand on its own 2 feet? or is it essentially a shell company? And so making sure that you have kind of those back end documents completed and that they're done right and that they conform with the kind of entity that you've actually created. That will save you a lot of heartache down the road. It will also make it a lot easier if you decide to bring other people into the business, or maybe at some point if you sell the business. Those are all the things that you really need to make sure are buttoned up. So I really encourage you not to stop here, but to take it a step further, reach out to an attorney who is familiar with this kind of stuff, who can complete those documents for you, can complete that paperwork for you, make sure your business is actually structured right on the back end, and then you can get rolling. The last step here that I will mention is you're going to want to apply for what's called an EIN, an employer identification number. You can only do that after this comes back accepted. So once you get that acceptance back, you're going to want to apply for your EIN. You can do that online. There's no fee associated with it, and it's a really, really quick process. But for now, this has been how to file your certificate of formation to form your Texas limited liability company. Hope it was helpful.